I was just checking my safety video that I put out. Remember a couple weeks ago, where it was at 50,000 views when I was in Red Deer doing a demo
Wow.
there.
Wow.
And I just checked this morning; it was at 199.8 thousand views.
Wow.
It just blows me away that that thing has taken off. It took a year, but it's just taken off.
Wow.
So I should show all my flying pieces, and then I would get a lot of views.
I guess. I think it's probably something about the the nature of the beast. It's a safety thing, and for some reason it took off. The fellow from Australia, he asked for permission to use it in some presentation he was doing, and I said absolutely. It's a safety moment. And then I also found that he put it up on part of a safety thing, and that thing has taken off. So I'm thinking that's probably where mine took off, because it's he said he was going to give me credit for it, and I'm sure that's probably the reason mine took off.
Well, if you get a call from Ringling Brothers, they want you to go on the road and demonstrate exploding bowls.
Yeah, well, as silly as it sounds, though, when I was in Red Deer, that was my safety moment, was to say, hey, make sure you wear a face shield. And guess what happened halfway through the damn thing? I launched the cube off the lathe. And it hit the face shield too, and it hit the face shield. So it was a perfect demonstration of safety gear works, but only if you're wearing it.
It only happens to Bert.
Yeah.
The trouble is, they keep on wanting to look at it to see the time when it hits you and knocks you out.
Oh, I suppose, yeah. Everybody, yeah. I guess that's one. Yeah.
They keep looking at it to wait for you to be knocked out.
Well, I'll keep wearing my face shield, because that's saved me a couple of times, so that's really good.
Well, Bert, how many times did you have to practice to get that thing to fly off right when you wanted it to?
Oh, I'll tell you. I don't think I want to practice that one.
Did you wrap some explanation around your video? I think you showed that one just as a little clip here on Zoom.
Yeah.
Did you add some comment and?
Yeah, I did explain what happened, and basically, in my analysis of it, is I used the wrong tool for the job. Yeah, because it was a spindle stave construction in the center with cross grain end caps. And when I first roughed it, I used the bowl gouge to get across the cross grain onto the spindle, and then I switched to a spindle roughing gouge to do the stave portion. And momentary lapse of concentration, when I was coming to the end, I didn't stop quick enough, and the spindle roughing gouge touched the end cap and self-fed and just destroyed it. It just split on the, it was, I think it was white oak, and so that's a fairly open grain wood, and it just rived the end cap open, and then all hell broke loose. Not one of the glue joints broke. It was all grain line. Every piece was just like it was rived open. And I put it all back together, and the next day I finished turned it.
You used a term that I hear occasionally, and I wish somebody would explain why or what. Self-feeding. This particularly, I hear it in conversation to hollowing out. Yep. What is meant by that term? I mean, does that mean you should only use a chisel across and come back, or I think come out rather than go in?
I think it probably relates more to the actual angle of the cutting edge on the grain of the wood, which is hard to get your head around because you can't see most of it. But if the angle and the shape of the tool is such, like the cup cutters are famous for self-feeding. As soon as they cut, they'll pull themselves right into the wood. So you got to put it on a shear scrape. But on a spindle roughing gouge, it's like a horseshoe. And if you happen to have the wrong part touch the wood, and it's so fast and it's so minute. I don't know, Mike, you probably do a lot more talking about the angle of the metal onto the wood than I would to explain that portion, but that's the only way I felt, is that it self-fed when it hit cross grain, which means that the tool just jumped into the cross grain and acted like an axe and split it.
That's right.
I think of it more the simple way. If you just think about the inside of a bowl, and you have a conventional scraper and you're pointed uphill, with a handle lower than the edge, the wood is coming into it, so it is going to grab it and it keeps pulling it in and rides it all the way down. That's self-feeding. And if you contrast that with, say, maybe this is not a good example, but if you think about a skate back you might get with a skew, it's not really self-feeding. I don't think it doesn't keep going deeper and deeper. It kicks you out, kicks you crossing out.
So
if you think about any catch you make, actually, it's the tool. The only difference between what you're talking about is the tool, because the angle, because the tool is drawn in, it pushes into the wood.
Yeah.
And that's what the self-feeding is. It's just, the whole thing, and that's,
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Mike, if I understand you right, in other words, if the chisel couldn't get pulled down, it wouldn't self-feed, right? If it was on a firm platform and couldn't pull, then it wouldn't self-feed.
No. It doesn't have anything to do with how firm you're holding it. It has to do with the angle of the edge hitting the wood. If it's pointing up into that wood, it doesn't make any difference how you hold it, what you're holding it on. It's going to go into that wood. It just means something different might break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hence why the spindle roughing gouge is never used on a cross-grain bowl, because
Exactly.
the shank on it,
That's why
it's the shank that could snap rather than the wood.
Okay. Yeah.
The other
Well,
tip,
you know,
the way that I make certain that my students, it's whichever tool we're using, I always tell them to get the bevel rubbing first before you go in with your cut, and bring your cut into that from the bevel. If you try to go straight in with a cut without doing that, 9 times out of 10, I guarantee somebody will get
It's a hard concept to get the student to understand and accept. You can tell them, you can show them, and the next thing you know, they're jamming it right into the wood, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Isn't that what you guys use? ABC, anchor, bevel, cut. Is that what you're talking about?
That's it.
Yeah.
But you've got to correct. Nobody will understand that unless you're standing there and you demonstrate it and correct them over and over and over. Otherwise, they're just letters that have no meaning.
Well,
but there's also a question you guys are talking about with the angle of your chisel. When you're talking about a really sharp chisel like a skew, they self-feed in a hurry because it's the 30-degree angle. If you have a scraper, a scraper by any means can self-feed, but the problem is that the angle is so high it doesn't cut into the wood deeply enough.
Yeah.
So that's really where you'll find it as the angle of your as the actual angle of your tip gets higher and harder. There's more of a chance of it digging in, no matter what. But if you take a look at a scraper like this or anything like that, any tool where there's a gap between the bottom of the wood and your tool, there's a chance of it self-feeding as such.
Yeah.
So that's why you ride the bevel. Once you go beyond the bevel, you're right in that zone.
You guys are talking about regular steel.
I object to the word self-feeding here, because really what's happening is that the edge, a sufficiently thin edge, will follow the grain, creating a condition called tear out in general woodworking. And you actually start breaking pieces of grain out. And if you try to use a roughing out gouge for bowl work, especially 90 degrees to the axis of rotation, you'll either break the handle, rip the piece off the lathe, scare yourself like hell, or do all of the above.
All of the above.
But you could actually, on that round piece, turn that gouge all the way like that and ride right across there and leave the smoothest cut in the world. I wouldn't do it with a roughing out gouge, but I'd do it with a spindle gouge all the time.
Spindle gouge and bowl gouge, absolutely. The different cross section and the stronger, less cutting edge, and more control of the cutting edge because it's not as big.
But why the bowl gouge works so marvelously in that condition is because it's really, if used properly, riding on the nose bevel behind the cut, and you can think of it as a bulldozer on a level surface. If you drove forwards with the blade level with the bulldozer, it creates a surface. And by rocking up and down off that bevel, you're creating the cut.
Ernie, would you agree, Ernie, though, that there's a point after which the tool will feed itself in, you know, what you're talking about, the scraping and the breakout and everything, there is some conditions where the tool will actually draw itself into the wood. And then it obviously causes a gouge or something, which is a catch.
Yeah, it's similar to a climb cut with a router.
Yeah.
Which actually with a router, if you're an experienced router, you purposely climb cut sometimes because you get a better frontage, especially with a rapiding bit. But if you try it with a router table or a shaper, you're going to be sorry for doing that.
Gentlemen, I wonder if you're talking about what I will call traditional tools, skews, gouges. What about these cup cutters? I think they changed the dynamic, the angles and all that. And, you know, like Jimmy Clues makes one at a specific angle with his cup cutter. I don't understand totally how it functions so well, but it's a marvelous piece of tool to me. But I think the shape of the cup cutter, now we're not, those are carbide, but it's the shape of the cup that affects this angle or self-feeding or pulling in or whatever.
It's not much different than the tip of your bowl gouge, Jim.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. I have to think. I just can't think it through. That's my problem. Maybe it's just that I'm done thinking, you know. So
Well,
put it on the wood and look at it.
Yeah.
And then put on a bowl gouge next to it and look at it, and then turn both of them, and you'll see that if you're putting both of them the right way to cut, that you got a similar angle of steel or carbide slicing.
Yeah, you would have to turn the gouge on its side, as it were, to get the same angle as the cup cutter coming straight in would be, right?
And that's
what you're saying, Mike?
Only slightly.
And that's why Jimmy Clues tools have the cup cutter on a predetermined angle that kind of fits, but I found that it doesn't fit everything, but it probably does about 80% of the applications. I like mine on a round bar because then I've got the ability to adjust it by hand. But if you put it in straight flat, you're going to have some exciting. It's going to be exciting. Yeah.
The only one I know that's sort of designed to go straight in is that tip that Mike Hunter makes to replace the one-way coring system tip.
Oh,
you know, it goes straight in. I don't think it's tipped down. It might be tipped down. No, I think it's flat. I think it goes straight in.
Yeah,
it's very aggressive too. You got to clear a lot of mud.
Are you talking a ring tool here or a tree pan tool?
I don't know about a tree pan tool. We're talking about one of those round cupped cutters that Mike Hunter sells for.
Yeah, they're tree panned around the edge so that you create a sharp edge at the edge.
Yeah. I've got a Rolly Monroe hollowing tool, and it's got a shield on the top so that you can actually control how much of the sharp edge is exposed. And that really helps if you're going straight in, because it'll try and dig into the wood, but it can't because it comes up against that little shield. Yeah. And for me, that was really, really good for learning how to hollow, but I don't use that hardly anymore. I just use the open cutter on an angle.
Bert, Jimmy Clues, that's one of the points he says, the way his are designed, they won't, whatever the term is that we want to use, they won't self-feed because he's designed so it hits the edge of the wood, and it can't pull in or whatever. So,
well, it'll pull in, but only a certain amount. It's a limited stroke, and that's what the Rolly Monroe shield does as well. And I think Henry Taylor's got one called the Big Brother that has something similar. And it's got a shield that you can put out there, and it'll only give you like a 64th of an edge. But then you have problem with the shaving. Where does the shaving go once it cuts? Because then they plug up. And I mean, dry wood, it works. Wet wood, it's a pain.
I think Mike put his finger on it, though. He said when you present the tool right, it cuts right.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter what tool you have.
Yeah. Before Jimmy Clues came out, I had a tool exactly like Jimmy's 20 some odd years ago from a company called BLT over here. And it was exactly the same. It was a flat square bar and the tip was machined on. The holding piece was machined on, so it was in a specific angle. The only thing you can do is to turn it left or right on that axis. So if you wanted to go behind the rim of a bowl, you've got a bit more control to go around the back of it. But that was 20 odd years ago I got that one.
It's like the tips, the carbide tips, the cupped cutters they use on hollowing tools. They mount at a slightly turned angle, so they're slicing, and they're also very small. I think they're three 3/16 of an inch.
Yeah, very quarter of an inch, something like that.
They're small.
What's that, Hank?
What I liked about it is with the square bar, you keep it flat. You know the angle of your cutter when you're going in, but you can't see. So you know you're going in at a fairly good angle as long as you have it pointing down when you go in. And
Don, you're exactly right. And I was gonna challenge Bert about the round bars. I do not like them now. I use one in Trent Bosch's stabilizer because I can lock it. Well, I set it for the angle and then I can lock it tight and I know it won't turn when I go in. That's a round bar, but it's still not strong enough for me. I need a good heavy one to go as deep as I am. I'm just having a lot of trouble with my hollowing. I get too deep and they chatter too much.
What size of bar are you using?
I'm using a 5/8. I don't have 3/4.
I've got a Vicmark articulated system when I'm doing hollowing, and when I go anything over 6 inches, I put in a 3/4 inch bar because I had 5/8 works good up to about 6 inches, and I can go deeper, but really, really light cuts. And exactly what you said, it vibrates. But with a 3/4, I can go about 10 inches, and it still vibrates even with 3/4 inch. It can still vibrate. So.
Someone mentioned the replacement cutter for the one-way coring system. What was that?
Core Pro.
Core Pro?
Core Pro.
Where do you get that?
Mike Hunter.
Mike Hunter. Okay.
Just do Mike Hunter tool. Google Mike Hunter tools. It's pricey. I can tell you, it's $200. It's got the little replaceable tips and those replaceable tips, you can get a lot of coring done before you have to replace them, and it's got you can reverse it to get use each end.
Yeah, I don't like the tips on the one way as they brought to us. They're hard to sharpen, and they don't stay sharp.
Yeah.
With their jig to sharpen it, the CBN wheel, they sharpen pretty easily.
Yeah, I haven't tried the jig. I'll have to try that.
Oh,
Yeah, you set
impossible to do if you don't have a jig.
Ah, okay.
In fact, if you see Glenn Lucas, he doesn't even turn the grind he now uses the Core Pro. But if you don't even turn the grinder on, if you have a CBN wheel, you just set the jig against the wheel and rub it.
Yeah.
And it's like honing it. You don't really have to sharpen it. All you're doing is honing. I've had mine for 20 years. I don't do it anymore, but I never had a problem with the jig.
Well, it's interesting to hear that it's interesting to hear that Glenn Lucas is using it because, I gave one, Mike Hunter gave me one to try out, and I did some videos with a guy that did a lot of coring. He tried it and hated it, and he gave it back to me with an old one-way system I adapted, and I've been using it since, but not a lot.
Well, the one-way one, you have to actually screw the cutter to their little jig, and they give you a pattern to adjust your platform rest to the right angle, and then it's springless. I mean, you just touch it, and I believe you could just do it by rubbing it with a CBN rail.
Hey, John Zig.
Yes, sir.
You're going to have to do the official announce, like you're going to have to pretend you're the other John.
Oh, I'm ready.
Just about 10 o'clock. We got to
Yes,
keep
it is.
on. That's the first thing he's going to check, whether we started at 10 or not.
Well, I'm looking at my clock and it says it says 10 o'clock right now. So it's 10 o'clock. It's Lancaster Woodturners Coffee Hour number 202. Mr. Kelsey is on an Amtrak train. He just texted me and said that he has a weak signal and can't join us, but to have fun and talk a lot. Something tells me that won't be a problem. Speaking of trains, I will say that not because of me, but John and a bunch of other folks finished the installation at the Amtrak train station in Lancaster. And although I had to leave a little bit early, I find it remarkable about the talent that is in the club. And so anybody that has a chance to go see it, I'm sure there'll be some videos taken, but it's a beautiful installation and a lot of beautiful work. So
John,
anyhow,
I went to
go ahead.
see it the other day. What a display. I mean, holy cow, professional looking and just classy. I posted it on my Facebook
Yeah,
because I was so impressed. I don't want a lot of people to go there because, yeah, it's well worth it. So
absolutely. And I will say, while I was there, the people that were in the station walking by, a lot of them just stopped and stared. I'm not sure they knew what they were looking at, but I think they were fascinated by the work. It's so diverse. It's just all over the place. It's not all round and brown, as John would say. And it's just a great display of what folks, the talent that the folks have and the visions they have. I guess I should have said that for some reason, John Kelsey asked me to help moderate this along with Jim Bowman. So that's what we're going to do. And I don't think I have any other announcements except to start to go to folks that have their hands raised. So David, let's start with you.
Hi, everybody. I had sent John some pictures to show because I'm uncomfortable with trying to share screen. I don't know if you have those.
I do not have those. If you sent them to John would perhaps next week, John can show them when he's back and able to participate or moderate the coffee hour.
That's fine, but I have another topic.
Okay.
I have a mulberry coliform here. Wow. And
Nice.
I'm wondering how people would finish this, what kind of finish they would use on this mulberry. It's got a nice grain pattern. It's not showing up very well. It's kind of blurred, but I'm wondering what people would do to finish that mulberry.
did you turn it green or was it dry?
It's somewhat wet, and I'm letting it dry.
The reason I asked is I think persimmon is typically similar to mulberry. And I turned it very green. I discovered I left it dry. It got a really nice feel to the surface. I wouldn't have put I put friction shellac finish on it. But oil would have been fine too. But it allowed it to be what it was, to feel like it is. I don't think it's a wood that you want to use a shiny finish on. That's my guess, but then I'm the guy that doesn't like glossy finishes. So
I would put a Danish oil on it right now.
Really?
With a wet or semi-wet, whatever, it'll slow down the drying. Do a coat one day and then do a coat the next day. Let it dry and then rub it with 4-0 steel wool and buff it.
Doesn't mulberry turn a really chocolate brown if you just leave it alone? And wouldn't you? And based on that, if that's the color you're looking for, I would make sure the finish doesn't stop that from happening.
It won't. I guarantee. In one of our older videos, right at the beginning, John has posted a picture of a mulberry bowl I did a long time ago, and then a picture of it 2 years later. So you see the beautiful brown that comes up. You can't duplicate it with any stain. It's just gorgeous.
Okay.
that's
I've got
kind
a
of
piece. Go ahead, Jim.
That's kind of true for Osage orange, isn't it, as well? It would be the similar type of change you would see in the color. So
I've got a piece of mulberry that Angelo gave me. I'm looking forward to turning that. I haven't ever turned mulberry yet.
Beautiful turning. Beautiful.
All right. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Garold, let's go to Garold.
Well, I was impressed with Jim Bowman's emerging bowl. So I had to try one. And I've got some slides here to show. I'm going to share screen. And I modified his technique a little bit, and something that I think will work well if you want to try this. First thing I did, of course, was turn the sphere, half a sphere, on the end of a square blank, and then I split it. And after
we don't see your video.
Oh, we don't see your screen yet, Garold.
Oh, well, I did a share screen.
I'm not seeing it.
Oh, darn. Hang on one second. Let's try that.
Ah, now you're getting
there we go.
Oh,
all right.
Good.
Okay. So I split the piece as Jim did, but I put it on a scale and weighed it. Weighed almost it was 179 grams, I believe. And after I did that, let me find my little cursor. I'm going to have to minimize this. There we go. Next thing I did, I took a blank of wood and kept cutting it down until I got about 179, 180 grams. Then I mounted the first piece on a block of wood. It's the same width as the emerging bowl is going to be. And I know one of the things that people questioned was the bowl part itself doesn't have any support. So what I did was cut a little blank of wood and cupped it out with a knife and placed it underneath the bowl portion and glued it in. And if you'll notice, what I've done too is I have mounted the emerging bowl blank onto a piece of wood with a paper joint. Okay.
What did you use to attach the wood to the paper and the substrate?
Just glue, just regular carpenter's glue.
Okay.
All right, here's the piece in the lathe. The backing I used was a piece of pine, twice the length of the emerging bowl blank. And if you look there in the background, you can see I'm using two jaws of my chuck, just like the duck's chuck, how Jim uses just the two jaws. And I held it then with the two jaws. That's a piece of pine, so it's pretty soft. But every short while I would tighten those jaws up just to make sure that nothing was going to come flying out. So it's relatively balanced. And of course, until you start turning the bowl out. So, all right. So after it was on the lathe and turned there, the bowl's pretty well turned out. And you can still see it's still mounted. Now I'm going to split the bowl or the blank off of the block of wood. And put my cursor here, maybe you can see there's the glue joint that will be split. Just a chisel and a slight tap, popped it right out. And there's the finished piece then. So after I popped it off, I took a scraper, scraped the back, and then sanded it and finished sanding the sides and put a finish on it.
Hey, Garold, that's beautiful. Can you go back a couple of slides when you had the piece mounted on the lathe?
Yes.
So that one. So as that's spinning around and you're taking wood off of the left side, the emergent bowl piece.
The balancing block is actually lower than the bowl.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because I was thinking that Otherwise, you're going to have a whole lot of, not catches per se, but pretty crazy turning. So you're only really turning the left side, and the right side never comes into contact with your tools.
Exactly.
I see.
I have another question. How did you manage to get such a nice clean edge on the block itself? Because you have no waste wood on either side, and you're going with a chisel straight across grain there. I have a lot of trouble with mine wanting to rip out, and so I like to have a waste block on either left and right sides, or
I think that's
top and
that's a
bottom.
good idea. If you notice right there,
Yep.
there is a
Yep.
small chip, but
Yep.
I was able to sand it down.
Yeah, there's a tool called the disc sander, which takes care of all that stuff. You just got to allow for it in the width of it if you want to just cut her down or plane it down. So.
Right.
Garold,
very, very little tear out.
You have in this picture a perfect example of balancing. If what I do when I'm trying a piece of wood like you've got, which is off-center, to find out if it's going to vibrate or not, is when it's in the horizontal position like that, disconnect the gear on your headstock, and I have no doubt that if you disconnected on this one, your balance would go down to the bottom. Right. You cut a little bit off that balance, put it back in, and when it'll sit like that, without the gear engaged on the headstock, it won't vibrate.
I don't have that advantage, Doug, on mine. I can't disconnect. It's variable speed.
Oh.
And, it's
well, I just take the belt off. Well, I understand, but well, okay.
Yeah. Doug, I do that too, but I have a direct drive electronic. Well, you know, the Nova direct drive, and it seems to be flexible enough that you can feel whether you're out. I wanted to make one other comment. Apparently, you did not have an issue that I had that kicked it off of the block when you were trimming right up the edge of your bowl in this position. I got that thinking through. John was trying to describe to me why it kicked out because my chisel was crooked in there. I think the next time I'm going to, believe it or not, use a skew to go in there to clean that edge right up on the edge, just the point of a skew. That way I don't have a chance of the opposite side catching the block.
Jim, I did use a skew there. Yes.
Did you? Okay,
Flat.
so you made all the right improvements.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, I think the block that you put under that bowl was a key thing for making sure it didn't kick out. I think that's an excellent idea. And
you guys keep forgetting I had a block under mine. I had it wedged in just like him. Just because you didn't see my video didn't mean it didn't have it.
The other thing I was thinking about, and I'm only holding with 2 jaws, and if I had a larger bowl blank, then my jaws wouldn't extend out far enough to be able to do this. So what I was thinking about doing then on a larger one would be to counterbore the back so that I could do a reverse chucking on it. I could run the jaws out instead of in. So it would be a hollow in the back.
The other thing Garold did is with that gluing his walnut onto a pine board completely with a paper glue. Jim, you didn't do that on yours, did you? You tried to clamp it in with a different way.
I was using carpet tape. I am not a glue. I don't like to use glue and paper, but hey, it worked obviously for him. And I think I got some CNC double stick tape, which I assumed is going to be a lot better than the junk I was using. So I'm anxious to try it, but it's a beautiful piece.
Jim, there's the back of the piece. After it was scraped and sanded, you don't see any glue residue left.
Okay, great. No,
That's
it
nice.
worked obviously. Yeah.
Hey, when you had it in that 2-chuck device, did you what kind of speeds were you running at?
Well, that was the other thing. I'm seldom do I ever turn over 1,000. So this was well under 1,000.
Huh. That's beautiful.
I'm leery. I'm afraid to turn that fast.
I have another question for you. What did you use to turn the inside of the bowl? Did you use a core bit or did you use a gouge?
I just used the gouge.
Oh, my hat's even off to you again.
No,
I like Mike's method. That's my speed.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I wanted to impress on Jim was what I was concerned about on his was how to hold it without the fear of it coming apart, coming off of your backing plate. And the carpet tape is one that I'm afraid of. So that's why I used the glue.
And you should be. Yeah, you should be, because that was not a good choice. But it was in my shop and I used it. So not a good idea.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
All right,
Jim, you bring up you bring up a good point here, but you need to stress if you don't have anything better in your shop, sometimes it's better not to turn and go out and get the right thing as opposed to try it.
I had a number of double stick tapes, but I thought the carpet tape would be the strongest one. But I don't think it was the carpet tape's fault. I think it was the turner's fault that he caught it. You know, if you hadn't caught it, it would went flying. So.
Do you have a warning sign on the door of your shop, Jim?
I have a lot of signs on the doors of my shop, but
well,
not like that.
Oh. All right. John Chalikian, how are you? Can't hear you. Have to unmute. Still can't hear you, John.
He took his video away as well.
Yeah, he did. So instead of unmuting, he actually unvideoed too.
John, it depends on what how many guys get on here. I do have some things to show. So
okay.
I didn't put my hand up yet because when I talk, the hand goes away. How do you like that?
Oh, well, there's John again. John, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. It went into something. Okay.
All right.
You can hear me now.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
So what I have is a project I've been working on for the past month and a half. And since I'm not obviously skilled with the computer and I'm not capable of screen sharing as yet, I'm going to take you into the other room and hopefully I can bring this up. What I've been working on is a barbecue set. It's a kit from Penn State Industries.
Right.
And so what I'm going to show, and the challenge was there was 4 spindles. And so I had to do it all with, or my challenge was doing it and keeping everything the same, you know. Okay, so here we go. Finally did it. I started off with a drawing, as
John,
you can see.
We can't see it.
We only see
your name. See it?
No, we just see your name.
Your video you lost.
How about now?
No.
Still no?
Nope.
Did you accidentally, what are you using, your phone? Did you accidentally bump the video button? And
I have a iPad and oh shoot. Let me see if
probably muted your video.
All right.
Hey, John, maybe you did what I did once, which is I flipped the cover of the iPad over the camera lens.
No, I haven't done that.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get back to the Zoom. All right, let me start video. Okay.
Now you're back.
All right, now let me see if I can reverse this.
Or just flip it around. Oh, there you go.
There we go. It's coming in. That needs to focus.
Yeah.
focus.
Maybe back away from it. I don't know.
Sorry for screwing this up here. Now we're back to that. I can focus on that.
Just turn the camera around.
All right.
Yeah, just turn the camera around.
Can you see this?
No.
Ah.
I think he needs to take his blur background off.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the problem.
How do I do that?
He doesn't have a blurred background.
Yeah, it's not focusing.
Yes, he does. He did have it.
He had a yeah, he had a blurred background when he was talking.
Don't you just
you do that in the video setting, John?
All right, can you see this?
No.
Blurry. It's blurry.
All right, I'm going to have to.
Yeah. See if you can take the blurred background off.
Click
where would
on your video. Click on your video camera where you turn your camera on and off, and there's a up arrow that gives you a drop down, and you should see something that says blur my background. You want to make sure that's not checked.
Stop incoming my video and gallery on video. All right.
Bottom left, you see it?
It would be down the bottom
Zoom.
corner.
It's in Zoom, in the Zoom application, along the bottom.
I don't have anything that shows. I mean, what pops up when I tap the bottom is mute, stop video, share.
Yeah. You're clicking on the little do you see a microphone and a camera?
Yes.
Click on, see the up arrow next to the camera?
Well, that's a share.
No, it's right next to the little camera near the microphone. There's a little caret, up caret.
I don't have that. All right, I'm sorry. You'll just have to. I'll have to do something else. Maybe I can.
Can you pick the pieces up individually, John, and hold them?
Yeah, I could do that.
Let's do that.
Okay, so what I wanted to show, let me see if I can do this, was for this project, I made.
There you go.
Yeah.
I made a lot of different samples. You know, I made a drawing. I made a template, and I went to some friends, and I asked them which ones to select, and it was a husband and a wife. And the wife said she didn't like the ones that were heavier, so I made it thinner, and this is the one that we chose, or she chose. And then I made another one, and what I did was I used the sample and I measured it, and I made my marks for the different locations, and I measured, did millimeters, and so I cut the patterns. I did these in purple wood or purpleheart, and this is one that my original design with the beads and all that, and didn't like that. One of the interesting things was that you had to drill the ends. I don't see that, but I held it in a vise, or my vise is a parallel jaws, and I cut a V-notch in each side to hold vertical things, and that was held it stiffly, and it actually cracked this end here cracked. So then after that, I drilled the holes in the ends by holding the wood and bringing the wood down. So anyway, these are the finished product. This is a tongs. And the challenge, I tried to do this as much as possible with a gouge and skews. And the challenge was keeping them the same shape. And I think I came pretty close to that.
It's very nice looking, John.
Thank you.
Nice job.
The finish that I don't know if you can see this. There's a band here that when I was making, with a parting tool, I was setting the depth to, cut down to it.
Right.
And I used, over here, I used this depth at this point. So obviously that was way too deep. And so I took epoxy. Unfortunately, I don't think you can see it. I took epoxy and filled that in. Oh, you can see the line? And it kind of made a nice little decoration on there. Kind of tells you which is left and right, I guess. But that worked out. I saved the day on that. The finish is, I call it French polish. It's a mix of shellac, 2-pound shellac, and linseed oil. And then I put, I have my own mix of waxes, carnauba wax and beeswax, and some oil mixed in for my wax. I'm not sure if I like the finish or not. I might go to a lacquer or a some kind of a heavier.
What don't you like about the finish?
It seems a little inconsistent. It might be part of the wood, but this down here is not quite as shiny as here. Or these aren't really shiny. It's more of a satin. There's a little bit of difference there in that. So,
did you put the French polish on while it was on the lathe?
Yes.
Okay.
And
you don't add DNA to it, natured alcohol. I call that friction polish. Blow, shellac, and DNA. No, and then I turn it fast.
Well, I mean, the alcohol is in the. It's a 2-pound cut shellac that I use.
Oh, okay.
So that's it. The other thing that Penn State has that's nice is comes with a bag for the tools to go into. So anyway, one other thing I wanted to share, this is kind of a tip. This is a remote control and a plug that responds to the remote control. And I got this from Harbor Freight. It was like $19. And I've used this. My shop is separate from the house, probably about 40 feet away. And I would use the remote control to turn on my electric. I have portable electric heaters. And I would turn on the 3 of them I'd go to my kitchen window, point out the window and push the button. And it would turn on the heaters. And it worked really well. So anyway, little tip. Now, since I'm not using electric heat, I put my air compressor, and I've been turning on the air compressor with the remote. And it's a pancake style. I guess it's about 10 amps or not 10 amps, 5 amps. But this will go up to 15 amps. Anyway, it works really well for a remote, and it was cheap. Couldn't get over how cheap it was. So that's it.
John, can I just comment on the finish on your handles?
Yes.
No matter what you use on your finish, the fact that people handle them is going to make them shiny. And in fact, it's a really satin finish, so your finish is going to last whatever. But it's the wear of people's hands that really make the piece luster.
Okay. Yeah, good point.
It'll develop a nice patina.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, and I guess if people are hanging out with hamburgers and stuff, it's probably greasy. That'll add to it.
That's waxing it, John. That's what that is.
Right.
I'm not sure shellac is a good finish to use where you might have moisture and all that. What do you guys know? Shellac's not known for being particularly good for moist, right?
I would use a urethane, wipe on urethane.
Yeah.
I do know that if you want to use what the ancient Romans used, you should use shellac, but they had developed other finishes for a reason.
Yeah, use a hard wax oil. If you put a hard wax oil on, then
Yeah.
it just runs forever. It's water impervious, alcohol impervious, and good for about 180 degrees C. So yeah, hard wax oil. I use Osmo, but there's lots of hard wax oils out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do have a hard wax on oil, hard wax on there over the French polish.
Isn't the shellac the reason when you used to set your wet cup on a dining room table from years ago, it would get a ring on it because it was finished with shellac?
Well, that'll happen with lacquer also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of finishes, before we actually started at 10 o'clock, Mike Brazeau had a chat talking about Minwax discontinuing Mike Peace's favorite finish, the antique oil.
We had somebody at a club meeting last night that did samples with 5 different finishes. He put a lot more coats on than I did. He used the original Minwax antique oil. He used Minwax tongue oil finish. He used, I think it was Osmo. It's either Osmo or Odie's oil. I don't remember which one. And then he used one other. He put 3 coats on them with appropriate drying time between them. Then rubbed them down with steel wool, and then he put 3 more coats. They all looked identical. The Minwax tongue oil is the cheapest, for whatever it's worth. So that convinced me. When I switch, I will go to the Minwax tongue oil until I'm not happy with it.
I think the tongue oil has a UV inhibitor in it, or it did at one time. I know the Minwax rep gave me a can of it years ago at a show. I've never made a lot of use of it. It's a little thicker than the Danish oil or an antique oil. Mike, do you think antique oil was any different than Danish oil?
Yes. The antique oil only had an oil like boiled linseed oil, I think, in mineral spirits. It did not have a varnish. Okay. The tongue oils finishes all tend to have, it's like, proprietary, but 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So there's a varnish in it. And I found that without the varnish, it did just fine. It dried quick and you build up the finish. So I liked it because it was thin and it went right into the wood.
Like I used to use Formby's oil and really, really liked it. And then Minwax bought them out, and so they're no longer available. I don't know what composition they're using now.
But there's probably no tongue oil in the tongue oil finish.
What is tongue oil anyhow? I've looked into it, but I'm not sure I understand what tongue oil really is.
It's a hardening oil from I think the tongue nut plant that generates tongue nuts, but it's it's I guess a little bit like boiled linseed oil or walnut oil, but it hardens, and it can be used as a finish by itself, but it takes a while to harden, from what I understand.
It's also, if I remember correctly, it's food safe.
Yes.
They're all food safe when they cure. Plastic is plastic. Once everything flashes off, all the bad stuff, you're just left with a hard, think of a piece of plastic. I mean, it's not really plastic, but think of that. You'd have to eat an awful lot for it to hurt you.
So I wonder what Minwax is using to thin out the tongue oil, because my understanding, it's pretty thick natively. A lot of, like, I use half and half from one of the milk paint companies, and they mix it with citrus solution to make it more applicable or whatever.
Hey, Mike, I don't know about all of them, but I know, for example, boiled linseed oils, most of those are dried using heavy metals that stay in the material. And
I don't know whether they all. I can't see. Yeah, I'm not a chemist. Somebody online there's a chemist, but once it hardens, it's inert. It may still be there, but it's not like it's coming out. It's into the finish and it's solid. Just think like a piece of plastic. Now, I would not try to convince some mother that has a child with some, very concerned about those things, food safe, just say, walk away. Don't try to convince them. But most people tend to agree that once they cure, they're all inert and nothing is leaching out. It's a solid object like corian or plastic or whatever.
What about them like wearing off if you're poking a fork in there and chipping, like especially like a urethane?
Again, I wouldn't want to try to convince anybody that had their mind set up it wasn't safe. But how much product could you chip off out of a wooden bowl with a fork that you're going to ingest?
Hey, Mike, I just have one comment. On the inside of your car window, what's that white stuff? And how old is that plastic? It's coming off.
Well, again, you're the chemist, right? So I wouldn't, some of that stuff's still off gases, but that's I don't know that that's necessarily the same as something that cures, but maybe it is.
I know that, like with leaded glass, one of the problems with using like leaded glass for storing whiskeys in is that the lead leaches out into the whiskey over time, and so that would be my concern, is that you'd think glass is pretty sturdy and wouldn't have that problem more so than plastics, and yet it does. So that's just my concern. Is I've seen other cases, and they have the reason so many military things cost so much is because then they don't off gas. They use special chemicals that don't off gas, especially on submarines, right? Yeah. So I'm just very cautious.
Well, I think there's something to be said for being cautious, and everybody's got to do what they feel comfortable with. I know I feel comfortable with eating my cereal out of a bowl that had multiple coats of Minwax antique oil that were cured, and I've been eating out of that bowl for 10 years. There's probably not a lot of finish left.
Have you seen the strange hair growing out of your head, though?
I wish. I wish.
I'd like to check in on this because I work with Minwax. They're located, not Minwax, Waterlocks, which is located right here in Cleveland, and that is a tung oil base. And their conclusion is that it's food safe after 30 days, which means that it's off gassed, as you said, Mike, all the vehicles, mineral spirits or whatever they use. But I do know early on in my research of finishes for turning books and so on, that most so-called boiled linseed oil is not heat cured.
Right.
Mike Mahoney with his walnut oil does thermally cure it and not catalyze it. Most linseed oil is catalyzed with a heavy metal. And the heavy metal alone isn't that dangerous, but it's when it forms a salt, when it gets into your body, or you put vinegar in a salad dressing on it, or so on. So I think we all have to be a little careful about what we declare as safe. The other thing I'd like to say is about shellac, that generally if you get a white ring on a table from a glass of whiskey with ice in it sitting on it, it is generally because the table was waxed subsequently to a French polish. But if you use a really good shellac flake form and you make it from flakes with denatured alcohol, you really come up with a very durable finish that's been around for centuries. It's an evaporative finish and not one that cures, and very repairable. But if you use a cheap grade of shellac, especially Zinsser shellac in cans, it's got a lot of wax in it. And it's the wax that's turning white and not the shellac.
Thank you. That's useful information. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think Mike has got a point about making your own decision, though, and that is that different people respond differently to different chemicals. So and as every minute doctor knows, sometimes a little bit of poison is a cure for something, whereas a lot of poison will kill you. So in every case, we're talking about does lead harm you? Yeah, lead pipes made helped drive the Romans crazy, but even the Romans knew that lead wasn't good for them. So I read recently that the aristocracy in Rome didn't use the water that had gone through the lead pipes. That was only for the poor people. So anyway, what you're talking about is being cautious. You can't make the decision for other people. You have to be aware. But to Mike's point, when I was doing some work in the industry, a lot of the carcinogens and the really harmful compounds were the curing things, the things that help harden it. So once all that had evaporated, so it was highly evaporated. So once that was evaporated, at least the volume of those harmful compounds was dropped to the point of salts and compounding and making other things out of compounds. Your guess is as good as mine.
Let me ask, so what if we wanted to put the most, I'm going to use the term innocuous finish on a piece of wood, what would it be? Oil? Is Mahoney's oil, for example? Is it
the most innocuous? The most innocuous finish I can think of is carnauba wax.
No finish.
Well,
Mike Mahoney says for his personal stuff, he wouldn't put a finish on it and just let it develop its patina. The wax on it makes it look good going out the door, but it's not going to last. If you want to stay shiny, you got to keep putting wax on it. So it kind of depends on what your aesthetic is.
But you're right, Mike. But at least the carnauba wax is on all your jelly beans, so you know you're consuming it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Jelly beans?
I don't. It's not the safeness. It's just how long it lasts. It just won't.
Yeah.
The waxes aren't much of a finish.
They're not much of a finish, but they are edible.
Yes.
I always dip my jelly beans in tongue oil.
Oh, tongue oil, huh? You put them on your tongue.
That's it.
Back to the conversation about different finishes and people's comfort level. The only one that I've found that has done research and advertises on their finish that it's food safe and children safe and safe for pets is Osmo. In Canada, I don't know if they've got it everywhere, but in Canada, it's certified as safe for children's toys, pets, and you could basically eat it right out of the can and it wouldn't hurt you because it's made out of vegetable oils and vegetable waxes, all plant-based, so they don't have any heavy metals. And so when I was doing markets, people would ask what finish is on it. I'd say it's Osmo, and it's, I'd have a can there showing that it was pet safe and children safe, just because they did the certification on it. But that's only in Canada. It's the same product, I think, all over the world, but it was certified in Canada for that reason. So I mean, that's what I use now. If anybody asks a question, I just say I use Osmo because I don't have to worry about me telling him it's safe. It's somebody else telling him it's safe.
I think the tried and true oil is a good oil. It's you use it on salads and it makes a nice finish. It dries better than like any kind of a salad oil. But walnut oil has been used by many turners. I use that all the time. It's certainly food safe.
Isn't the salad bowl
shellac
finish?
is also absolutely safe as well if you can eat shellac. And in fact, confectioner's glaze is highly refined shellac.
I think the salad bowl finish that they sell, I forget what it is, but it was actually approved by the FDA as food safe.
General finishes, but the reason the others weren't, they were willing to pay a lot of money to go through all of the testing. Their finish is probably not any different from most any other similar finish. It's just they paid the money, a lot of money, to go through all the testing that was required to come up with that certification that the other companies weren't willing to spend the money on.
Yeah. But it's no longer offered as a product with certification. I think Balins have one. I thought I had a note from years ago the statement from the FDA. It had been on a forum a long time ago. I Googled it, and there is a brand new webpage from the FDA on food chemical safety that covers a lot of packaging, and this would probably fall under it, but it describes what they do. Again, it's not definitive, but you know.
I'm gonna bet that anything you get out of China does not have Osmo on it. It costs too much. So don't expect it to be child-proofed by Osmo if it came from China. So
over here we use chestnut Food Safe. It's literally called Food Safe, and it's made by Chestnut.
There's a flax oil. I forget who offered it. Was it Woodcraft or one of them? I said, I wonder what that's like. That sounds about as good as walnut oil to me. So,
well, fascinating discussion. Finishes is something I'm not an expert on. I usually use Odie's. I have some Osmo I haven't tried yet, but I will. We'll see.
Yeah.
So
Odie's,
go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
Odie's is one of my favorite ones. Plus, it leaves your hands nice and greasy afterwards too. It's nice, soft. You almost have ladies' hands when you're done. So.
That's what my wife said to me.
Hey, I have some things to show John if you're looking for some. So
yeah, please do. Go ahead.
Okay, well then I better go show it. And I got it because I want to show video probably. Okay. I'm gonna start with, you guys are seeing this, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna start with a chunk of wood that is red dyed on the bottom and green dyed on the top. It has a knob, a natural knob on it. It was a crotch piece that had been in my wood pile way too long, and I wanted to see what the grain was in it. Well, it was dozy as heck, and so I had some of the PC petrifier or something. One of you guys mentioned that, and I had some of my shops that put it on the dozy part. Well, that knob intrigued me greatly, and I said, I don't want to lose that. It was on the bottom side, because here, I'm going to play this video to show you why I liked it. I said to my wife, I think that's going to be a candy dish sitting on our counter. So it was just fun. It was just fun. What can I say?
So, Jim, how did you mount that if you preserved that knob?
Oh, mercy days.
What, you use double stick Scotch tape?
No, I did not do any, and it didn't fly off. I mounted it from the top side first and turned that shape. And then I had to mount the bottom with the bump in it. So I took the tallest pins I had for my cold chuck. I mean, they're like 2 inches or whatever. And I made a blank of 3/4 inch. It was actually 1/2 inch. The knob's about a 1/2 inch protrusion. And I cut a little hole out for the knob, and I put it in my cold chuck to turn the inside. Hey, it stayed. But it was just good luck. I didn't glue it fast or anything. So it was a little bit of a hair puller. Well, I don't have any, so it was a little bit of head scratcher. So, but it worked okay.
So it was just a friction fit?
Just a cold chuck. I have a couple cold chucks, a small one, a big one. I'm a cold chuck guy, and so I had tall pins, maybe about that tall. But
so how big is this piece? How far does that protrude off the bottom?
It protrudes 1/2 inch off the bottom. It's about 5 inches wide and about 3.5 tall. I'm sorry, I don't have it here right now, and I forgot to measure it.
But the knob is maybe a 1/2 inch proud of the bottom, but the bottom is on an angle.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, me and the disc sander talked to the wood. I ground some of the bottom off here. You see, you can probably see my logo. I ground it directly across from it so it'd have a corner edge to sit on.
Oh, I see.
did a little engineering on it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there you can see where I sanded it because yeah, that was great.
So Jim,
That piece works upside down.
What?
I like it. It works upside down with the knob up. I liked it that way.
Okay. Well, then Don, like Don would say, if it looks good upside down, it's a good turning.
Can't get to the jelly beans though.
Oh, that's right. Or M&Ms, as the Lancaster Club would say. So
right.
Yes,
Jim,
Don.
I'd also comment that this is a feature bowl for yourself because it's like the man who made it. It keeps people slightly off balance.
Thank you very much. Hey, well, if we got a couple more minutes, I got a Japanese tree lilac. I think I said it right. I found a piece of my wood pile again that had, as you see this turning when I turn it, had a bark inclusion down the one side and a big crack on the other. But that just made me want to turn it. So here's what you got. Japanese lilac really smells when you turn it.
Wow.
Here
so that was split. That was split beforehand?
Yes, those both were in there, and the crack was in it. I said, "Still, it's Japanese lilac. I wanna do it." This crack was in it too. No use.
How tall is that, Jim?
That one is 8 inches. The reason I forgot to write it down, the reason I know is I hollowed it out and I was reaching way beyond my 5/8 inch bar capability. But
yeah, I was going to ask you how you hollowed it to the bottom.
I always use the largest Forstner bit I can get. I measure the top and figure out what wall thickness I want, and then make a Forstner, and I go down, and so then I'm just having to take out the slight side, and this one didn't have a lot to take out, but now I have one more yet, John.
Okay.
This one is epoxy with chunks of leftover from the Japanese lilac and old cherry. And because I'm a tightwad and I don't want to throw away epoxy, I put what I was thinking was going to be a waste block down the middle. Well, somehow it was not lined up right, so it's showing here at the top. But let me show you what this is. This doesn't have audio, so we can talk about it. This one was kind of fun, but I was disappointed that because I just threw a piece of old maple or something in the top, is really to be about the cherry and the Japanese lilac and purple epoxy, I guess you can see. And I do not have a laser or a camera, so I managed to cut through the bottom, believe it or not. I had a nice foot on it. That was part of the whole bowl arrangement. And while I was hauling it out, I'm doing it blind. I don't know how you guys do it without any kind of assistance and get a thin wall. I was at less than, I'm about an 1/8 inch wall there. Down in here, I'm a little more. But I ended up cutting through at the foot because I had misguessed the distance down. And so it came away, and I said, I'm not going to throw this away. So I mounted it in a little cherry container. It has some cracks on the top. I'm actually half thinking about going out in the shop and cutting it off right about here and making a different kind of bowl out of it. I don't know. It was a day of discouragement in the shop, I'll put it that way. So
I don't know. There's something appealing about it, Jim.
yeah.
The resulting shapes are kind of cool.
Well, I was looking at trying to make another type of shape, and I'm not good at following patterns from others. Even if I cut little grooves in, it just never quite works right. So I just go. Yes, John.
Yeah, I was going to say I like the long neck. I think it works really well with the curves and the color that you have in there. I think if you were to cut it down, I think that would take away.
Yeah, I agree.
I wouldn't touch it.
Well,
if you chop it down, it's going to, I don't know, look squat, or you're going to lose the flow of the curves that you have in there.
Thanks, John. Yeah, part of the reason I was wanting to cut it down, the junk wood, what I call junk wood, the waste wood that I put in it, was checked on the end, and you see it on the top here now, which bothers me, but I like the rest of it. So I sanded it up early this morning and decided to live with it. So, by the way, if you guys photograph like this or do a lot of photography of your work, it's even better for seeing scratches than if you spray water on it. I swear sometimes I have sanded perfectly good, no scratches from previous sandpaper. And guess what? I put the oil on it or the finish on it, and there it shows. So I'm now a lot of times I resand them after I photograph them. Hey, I see Toby's out here. I'll get out of the way and let the master go at it with the dot.
So let's finish up with Toby, but beforehand, I just noticed that Sarah sent a note. If you do cut it, maybe an oblique cut instead of a flat cut across the top could be interesting.
Ooh, Sarah, that's a great idea. Oblique. Oh, yes. You mean at an angle, right?
Yes, yes.
I thought you did. I got to think about that. That's a great idea. And already the stem is at an oblique angle.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, if you do that, I want to see it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll bring it back if I do that. Boy, I think I might.
All right. Toby, we got about 3 minutes left.
That's fine. I have one piece to show here. There we go. Got that.
Whoa.
Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay. I get my firewood from a pallet mill before they put the pallets together. And this was a piece of, it was about 3.5 by 3.5 and 3 feet long. One of the boards they use underneath the pallet. And I saw it had some figure in it. So I threw that one aside for turning later. And this is a short piece, 6 by 3 inches that I made from it. Had some nice figure in it, as well as the curl and little knot hole there.
That's very cool.
So the top is from the same piece, and the grain kind of matches up.
Yep, very nicely.
And I have a picture with the lid off here.
Toby, the neat thing about that knot hole is you can see what's in it just peeking through the knot hole, right?
I don't think it's you can't see quite through it, but it probably would leak out. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you fill that with any knot, the hole? Did you fill it with any epoxy or anything, or just leave it natural?
No, I just left it all natural in this piece. Sometimes I do fill them in.
Nice.
The colors on the base are really pretty. The underside.
Wrong piece.
Toby, I think you're doing
there
something.
We go.
Toby, I think you're doing something and you're dying. You're not telling us. It's a secret you have. Because I admire your work and I go, how do you do it?
Look at that.
Nope, I just mix it up and brush it on.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay. Well, we're up against
I think
10.
Toby's secret on his dying is that he just gets out there and does it. That's the secret. It's just
Exactly.
go do it.
That's what he says
Exactly.
every time, but I wonder what the does it means. Nice
Well,
work.
it's always beautiful.
Thanks.
And so anyhow, that was very good. Thank you all. It's 11 o'clock, and I think we're going to enjoy John when he returns next week. But have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
John, you did a good job. Thank you for hosting.
Yes,
Oh well,
John.
you
Welcome.
guys are the ones that do these meetings. So thank you all.
Wood shop. Thank God for wood.